good.
Well, and you think about a whole year, 52 weeks. If you can be pretty consistent on getting one most important thing done in your personal life and in your work life through the year, think of how much that adds up.
It's huge.
So that's why I say start with the week. Maybe think of it each day as well, but definitely, what is your one most important thing for this week?
Yeah.
If you start there, you're going to see tremendous progress. Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take you to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. We are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman, and today's show is titled New Year's Goals.
Yay!
Welcome to 2025.
These are some of our favorite things to talk about, you and me. We do love this.
Yeah, this is our tradition to have a New Year's goal setting, planning, and doing and executing a podcast on the first Monday of each new year. It's 2025.
Who knew?
And we got another New Year's goals topic for you. So we're going to talk about the one most important thing. So as you're doing your goals, you have to execute those. You have to do them at some point in time. And of course, there's the whole year, there's quarters, there's months, there's weeks, and there's days, and then there's hours. So what do you do with each of those moments? So one way to approach it is to ask yourself this question. If there's only one thing I could do that would make all the difference in the world, what is it? Write it down, and then, for heaven's sake, get that one thing done if it's the most important thing. And then put the time limit on it. So let's start with the most important thing for this week. So every week, Rachel and I will have a planning meeting Sunday night, and we'll look at the whole week, and we try to ask each other this question. Rachel, what's your most important thing for this week? And she'll ask me, Davis, what's your most important thing for this week?
I just want to pause. You're really good at this. So, I mean, I just want the audience to know this is your wheelhouse.
It is.
This is your wheelhouse.
Planning and executing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this like you're buttering a piece of toast. I mean, you're just acting like this is what you need to do. For the rest of us, it's not like that. I mean, every time you ask me that question, I just am like, I've got 15 things that are the most important things. So, this is Davis. Like I said, this is really easy for him. I'm still learning this. So, and I'm getting better at it.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
But yeah, if don't turn this off just yet. I can sense that people might be tempted to go, this is not my thing. The benefits of doing this are myriad. Well, I mean, this can be so valuable, and especially in a marriage, when you can encourage each other with these touch points, when I know what your big thing is, when you know what my big thing is, that's great for our whole relationship the whole week long. So for those of you who feel like, oh my goodness, I've stepped in it today, this is not my thing, just hear us out, because this is easy for him, but I'm trying to figure it out too.
Well, and every year on this podcast, we've tried to present something that can help you, give you a practical nugget. So, whatever you take away from this, let it be just one slight improvement to whatever you're doing. Yeah. And so you could do this. I want to start with the day or the week. So on a given day, you might ask yourself, okay, what's the most important thing I need to get done today? But ask yourself this second half that would make all the difference in the world. Right. Because sometimes it might be the urgent task. Sometimes it might be a really important thing that doesn't have to get done right now. But if I got it done today, it would make all the difference in the world.
That is an excellent point. And I think you might want to review the urgent, important thing, because you've just really made a really good point. It's easy when you think about that question to just give in to that thing that's just breathing down your neck, that's just making you crazy. But that might not be the most important thing. That just might be the urgent thing. Right. But it might not be the thing that's going to make all the difference. Right. So that second half of that question is really important.
Yeah. Well, the example I always give on that is, do you need to buy your wife flowers? If that would make all the difference in the world today or this week, well, then, for heaven's sake, get that one thing done. Order those flowers, put a big check mark on it, and say, okay, I didn't get a lot of other things done, but I did get the most important thing done.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
that is
the
a good
example
point.
I like to think of.
Well, and I think as a mother with young children, the most important thing may not look like the most urgent thing or the most important thing to anybody else.
Well,
it may be for a young mother, I really need to make sure I sit down and read with that child.
Exactly.
Or I may need to make sure that we go on this explore out in the woods like I said we would do. Or it may mean that we actually do that craft I've been promising the kids we did.
That's
and you know what?
Exactly the kind of thinking we're talking about.
Exactly, because it doesn't rotate the laundry and it doesn't put a gourmet meal on the table for dinner. But it does spend time with that child, and it does read that book, and it does go on that explore, and it does do that art project. And so this is not just thinking about goals. This is like rethinking how we're thinking and how we're spending our time.
Yeah. So again, I like to think of this question in terms of what is the most important thing today and what's the most important thing this week. Again, just one thing. You can only put one, if of all the things you got on your list, if you can only put one thing for this week, and we tend to live in terms of 1 week at a time, and then there's maybe things we plan and schedule further out. But okay, Sunday night, what do we have on the calendar for this week? Do we have some people coming over? Or are we going to somebody else's or a meeting that I got to get to? And you can also break this into personal or family and work. So there might be the one thing that you absolutely got to get done this week that would make the most biggest difference at work. And then that same question for at home or in your personal life, the most important thing, which ends up being two things. So the list grows very quickly. But every week, every Sunday night, we'll try to ask each other that question. So Rachel, what's your most important thing for this week? As a way to help and encourage each other to do that and to remind each other to think that way.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of other things and details you can do to help make this work well. For instance, I have a spreadsheet where each week when I ask myself this question and Rachel asked me, I type in, okay, for this week, here's my most important thing, work-wise and personal-wise. Now, if you look at my spreadsheet, you will see that out of 52 weeks last year, there's probably about 10 to 12 where I didn't write anything down for that week. Because you know what? I'm not perfect. I didn't get to it every week. We were gone. We were away. Sometimes travel interferes with that process. Sometimes it helps with that process. But the point is, there were weeks that I didn't actually write something down. But the weeks that I was consistent in writing down, and I can look back and go, oh, yeah, I remember when that was my most important thing. I tended to be actually more productive because I got the important things done.
Exactly. And you know what? I don't know. I think this is an old illustration now, but it's still just as poignant. If you get like a large container and several large rocks and then like small rocks and then like sand, and you need to get all of these things into this container, the most important thing you can do is not the sand or the small rocks first. The most important thing that you need to do is put the large rocks in first. Your most important things in first.
And then the others will fit in.
And then the other things fit in. And so often we're distracted by the sand. What am I going to do with all this sand? There's a lot of sand, or there's a lot of little pebbles we got to get done. But if we're really focused on doing those big things first, everything else has a way of falling into place.
Right.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But we got the most important things done first, and it's really important. And I just want to reiterate, I said this a minute ago, but doing this as a couple, I think, is really built into our relationship too. Holding each other accountable, encouraging each other. I can get distracted, right? I mean, one of the things that sometimes, not often, not as often as it should be, my most important thing is filing. And I think you have the same thing. I don't like to file, and I don't know why I don't like to file. And my file pile will just grow. And it is so exhilarating when I finally get it done. But when I will confess to you that my most important thing today is my filing, It's great because I would rather do 1,000 million things, like clean out the bottom of my refrigerator, or maybe even the bottom of the toilet after the grandkids have been here, right? Than file, which is silly. And you will see me distracted, and you'll go, Rachel, how's that filing coming? And it'll be like, the toilet's clean on all 3 floors, but I haven't done the filing yet. So it really is a great thing to practice in your marriage, in your relationship. But also I can celebrate with you when I get the one thing done, right? And it's nice because sometimes those one things are silly things. Sometimes they're big things. And you have someone to celebrate with.
Well, and it helps you prioritize.
It does.
No matter how big or small your list is, something's probably really important to get done because it's either urgent, important, timely, relational. There can be a myriad of reasons why one of those rises to the top, but it's so easy for the big rocks to fall through the cracks or on the wayside and get missed if we don't at least look at our list and say, what's the most important thing on this list for this week?
Right.
And then potentially for this day.
And we've had to defend it a couple of times. I know how I have. I've told you what it is, and you're like, that's what your big rock is? And I've been like, I've been putting it off. I've got to get this done today. And that's a good exercise too. Right. So I think it's really built into our relationship. It's really helped me because this is really easy for you and it's not as easy for me. So I feel like I've grown in this way, which has been really good.
Well, and you think about a whole year, 52 weeks. If you can be pretty consistent on getting one most important thing done in your personal life and in your work life through the year, think of how much that adds up.
It's huge.
So that's why I say start with the week. Maybe think of it each day as well, but definitely what is your one most important thing for this week?
Yeah.
If you start there, you're going to see tremendous progress. Now, I'd like to transition now to the month.
Yeah.
So I had several projects last year, several projects the year before that were going to take longer than a day or a week. Mm-hmm. And so it was good to put them in the month or the quarter category and say, okay, this project needs to be my number one thing for this month because it's winter. I want to get it done before the spring and summer. Yeah. So this is a good time. So January or February, I got to be working in the garage, cleaning it out, organizing it, whatever that project is that usually is larger. But then when I would find myself with a couple extra hours of free time, I would then, my number one thing for this month is the garage. And I'd head to the garage and start working and cleaning and organizing and doing whatever I needed to do. And as a result, I made lots of progress on that medium-sized project that would have been real easy to just say, I'll get to that later.
Right.
So that's the next step is looking at the month or the quarter, which is the longer, the bigger project.
And I read something. I don't know who to attribute the quote to, and I'm going to mess it up so much that no one will want credit, but the idea is that the people who are the most successful are the ones who discipline themselves to do the next thing that needs to be done and not procrastinate, not get distracted on social media and not get distracted with whatever we all have our common distractions, right? But the person who dares to just do the next thing that they need to get done. And that's what you're talking about, is being hyper-focused. You know what your big thing is. And so when you have some free time, instead of scrolling, you're actually working on your one big thing. That's huge.
Yeah. I don't have much time for TV. We have our shows. We watch a couple old shows.
I was going to say, we don't have a current show. You need to be very clear about that. We do not watch. I mean, when you say to people that we have our shows, they're thinking we have a single show that is very, very old. It is so old it's in black and white. So don't overthink it. But
the whole point is we don't watch. We spend our time doing the things that are on our list that are important, that are productive, right. We don't have these distractions that are out there. Now, I want to go from the monthly goal and the quarterly goal to the annual goal.
Well, you didn't talk about quarterly yet.
Well, quarterly is just a bigger project than month. Okay. And I actually believe that as you get to these longer periods of time, it actually gets harder to think of one thing. So I can wrap my mind around the daily, the weekly for sure, and the monthly. The quarterly gets a little harder to think, okay, what's the most important thing that would make all the difference in the world that I need to be working on this quarter?
These 3 months.
That's a much bigger ask.
So now here's a question. You don't do this for the whole year in January.
No, I wait till the quarter
But I mean,
comes.
you need, clarify that, because that would be
I
overwhelming.
probably have an idea what a couple of those quarterly projects or one things might be.
Or need to be.
But
yeah.
I wait till I get there because things can change, and things have definitely changed as I go through a year.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing for the year,
Oof.
that's the hardest one of all the, and I'll specifically say not to-do list, but goals, things that you want to accomplish this year that would be really good and important for your life, your family, your finances, your spiritual walk, your character building, your education, whatever category that one thing fits in. When you look at all of them, if you can pick one thing and say, this is my one thing, the most important thing. And so on any given week, if someone were to ask, okay, what's your number one thing for this week? Okay, yeah, it's the following. But if they were to ask, what's your number one thing for the year? Well, you know what it is because you've already decided this month in January, here's my number one most important thing that would make all the difference in the world if I can actually discipline myself to get this done or to work on it maybe all through the year.
Right.
But this is what I want to accomplish this year. You've got to know what that is. Maybe write it on a Post-it, put it on your mirror, put it on your car so that you see it all the time.
Yeah.
And remind yourself each week what that one thing for the year is. That's huge in terms of focus, planning, execution, discipline, because if you're thinking about the annual number one thing every week, you have a much better chance of succeeding in accomplishing that than if you only think about it once a month or once a quarter when you try to review some of these.
Now, having said all of that, it's very inspiring, encouraging, a little intimidating, but that's okay. I mean, I'm all about, growing and improving, so I'm good with that.
Challenge is one of our things we
both
part
love
of this
that.
podcast is about.
But I also happen to know that proverb that talks about man plans his steps, but the Lord
redirects those steps.
So talk about that, because that sounds like it's in direct contrast with everything you're talking about here. So tell me how those two things go together.
Yeah, so Proverbs 16:9, one of my favorite verses. Matter of fact, it's the tagline on my email.
Yeah.
Now, I love planning.
Yeah.
I feel God's pleasure when I plan. Kind of like Eric Liddell with the Chariots of Fire. But God does redirect our steps. He redirects my steps. That's why I don't put down all my monthly or quarterly goals at the beginning. Now, I do put down my one annual goal because I don't want that one to change. I want to be thinking about that all year.
Yeah.
But it is true. And it's beautiful and it's enjoyable for God to redirect the plans that I put in place so that his plan can happen in my life. And that's what you have to keep in mind too, is that it's great to plan. If you love planning, hey, welcome to the club. But make sure you're a planner that is very open to God redirecting your steps, adjusting things, tweaking things, for things to come into your life to where you say, whoa, okay, I need to totally rethink this because God has called me to something or shown me something or presented a trial or an opportunity that I need to take advantage of. I need to be listening, thinking, and responding to God's movement in my life.
So what you're talking about then is this constant practice of discernment, this constant practice of seeking God, because we've talked here before about how I used to do the lesson plans every week for the kids. I would plan it all out, and then I would literally lay my hands on my lesson plan book and go, okay, God, this is my plan, but you know what this week holds, and I don't. But I do think that there's something to be said for being responsible enough to plan and then holding it with open hands to see what God will do.
Open hands. That's a great way of saying it, so that you don't get tied to your plan.
Well, and you don't get ticked when it doesn't work.
Exactly.
I mean, that's in the early days of homeschooling, I would just get angry when everybody wasn't cooperating with my plan, but that wasn't the point.
Well,
right?
and it's been said that the plan isn't what's important, but planning is the difference.
I agree.
And makes all the difference. Whether you're building a house, designing and building something smaller, you can't do it without a plan.
Right.
Now, once you get into it, you might make some adjustments and some change orders, and you change things a little bit. But starting with a plan is what's helpful and important.
Right, and what we advocate for here is that we're planning to live intentionally and diligently in the raising of our kids and forming a family.
Intentionality being an important part of
Right.
it. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all the things that are easy for you today.
Well, I hope it was helpful for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This is 2025, and we're starting a brand new year on the Let's Talk Homeschool podcast, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. We're your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman. Have a great day, and until next time, we are walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.